rescinding resolution number 02288, filing claims. City Manager.
Very good. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. If I could defer this discussion to our city attorney, that'd really be helpful, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Great, John. Thank you, Mayor, Council. This request for rescinding the resolution stems from a change in state law. The Governmental Claims Act used to mandate that when you were served with a governmental claim, it would be served on the business office of the municipality. Well, that's pretty broad. Does that mean the city manager's office, the CFO's office, or the clerk's office, wherever? So, as an effort to resolve that, a past council decided you should serve the, basically as a limited position, the risk manager's office. And so that's what we've had on our books. However, in the last several years, the state legislature said this is a big ambiguity, and so to have it uniform throughout the state, people won't have to look up a resolution for your community versus your community versus your community. We're going to have them serve the clerk of the municipality. So now it's Fleur who is the sole target out there to receive these type of documents. So this is basically just a technical change to make our to acknowledge that the state statute is in effect and that our resolution is violent of it.
That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, any questions?
Thank you.
She's ordered.
We'll be bringing it to the floor for formal consideration. And
It is, and I think it's on a consent, so.
Okay, very good.
Okay, move on to Wyoming Association of Municipalities, award application resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Every year about this time, we get a little packet from WHAM that says, hey, if you've got any candidates for these various award programs that you'd like to recognize from your community, to bring it forward. The city of Casper has participated in the past with nominees for these awards and that kind of thing, and some have actually gone through and been recognized with respect to whatever category you see here in front of you. And so we're inviting you to consider those award applications or categories and citizens you might be aware of that would be good candidates for consideration. You'll note the due date for those possibilities, and if you would like to have someone propose, certainly maybe talking in here would be fine, or visiting individually is fine as well, as far as I'm concerned. The other half of this is with respect to resolutions. The organization has a process wherein each city council is invited to provide resolutions to WHAM, offering formal direction, if you will, from the respective community as it relates to legislative issues that you would like to see considered by the WHAM organization. They take that collective amount of resolutions, they bring it to their resolutions committee, and then the committee tries to organize them and vote on them and all these kinds of things to determine a very, very basic set of priorities for WHAM to consider. And then the body as a whole considers what comes through that process. I want to bring this to your attention because indeed we want to have you consider resolutions that you would like to propose to the WHAM organization for its potential to percolate up through to a legislative directive by the organization as a whole. So I'm putting that bug in your ear right now simply as a starting point and to initiate some thought for a conversation that we will have here in the very near future to potentially participate in as a community and as an organization.
May I add something, Carter? Mr. Mayor? First off, I think we should pay attention to the Community Hero Award as one that we have a number of people that we could consider to honor who have done great service to our community, and I'll leave it to all of you to start considering names, but I don't think we've ever provided a name for a potential awardee with that, and obviously there are many people in this community that I think should be considered. And then with with respect to the resolutions, we were just talking about the issue involving the legislature getting involved in liquor fees down in Cheyenne, which to me is very similar to what happened in Jackson, where the legislature got involved with trying to decide how the county should zone their properties. And I really think it's time for WHAM to pass a resolution about local control and home rule, and really push back against some of that, make a very clear statement that we're all elected representatives, and we are the ones who should be running Casper, and the county commissioners are the ones who should be running Natrona County, and the state legislature obviously has a critical role. In fact, we are a creation of the state legislature, but if they're gonna create us, let us do our job. And so I'd like you all to think about that, and maybe we could help WHAM get a little stronger spine, I guess, rather than deal with these things in a reactive way when they come up, to say as an organization, we have a stance on that. So.
I agree with what Charlie's saying. I think we do have some people in our community that really help us out a lot. It'd be nice to recognize them. I guess when the legislature gets all done and the smoke clears, I really believe that WHAM's proposals that they submitted this year were pretty much in line. As I recall, we passed them all. And whatever didn't pass, we ought to make sure it's on the docket again for next year, because it's going to be a full session.
All right, so on to WHAM voting delegate.
Mr. Mayor, if I could defer to the clerk for this conversation, I'd appreciate it.
Your Honor, members of council, WHAM has asked that we also select officially a voting delegate for their June business meeting. It's on June 10th, I believe, or the 11th, June 11th, sorry. And we need a voting delegate and an alternate. So if you tell us who you'd like to select for those, if any of you can go, we will submit it to them, we'll pass it through council and then submit it to them. We can always change it if your schedules change, but.
And so, Mr. Mayor, council, if indeed you're not prepared to decide on that tonight, because many of you may not be certain of your travel plans for June, this too we'd like to put as a bug in your ear, and if you prefer, we can bring this back in a couple weeks. When's our deadline on that?
Our deadline is May to submit, so if we pass it at our last meeting in April, we'll be fine.
Plenty fine. So we may need to set a meeting topic in this regard and see if we can't get that taken care of.
And maybe you said this, Fleur, but it's in Laramie, the 10th through the 12th.
So,
Yeah, let's discuss it further instead of somebody just making a decision tonight. Be able to look and see what you got going on. I think, isn't CNFR that week?
Next week.
It's the following week.
Yeah. It's the 14th through the 20th.
It looks like the meeting is June 11th, but they have to be in by May 15th, so.
Yeah.
very good.
Is there anybody that wants right off the bat saying that they want to jump on it?
I think I might be out of town for work that week. I have to look at my work calendar though.
Okay.
We'll bring it back.
Circle
then.
back.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks like I'm really busy.
Okay, and then we'll go over the agenda review for tonight, and in particular, you have the budget amendment number 2 on there.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we talked quite a bit last week, I believe it was, or maybe a couple weeks ago, I can't remember, about the budget amendment. And the only thing I really wanted to bring to your attention tonight in pre-meeting is with respect to one more change we needed to add to the amendment to help streets out. There is a maintenance and repair contract that we enter into with a contractor to basically outsource some of the more mundane repairs and so forth for our luminaires, our street luminaires. And a year ago, we didn't quite understand that extensions for that contract would run out at this point in time. And so we need to go ahead and extend that contract, or put a new one in place, I suppose. But it does cost a $40,000 expense, which is not atypical for what we've done with this contractor. So we would ask that that would be included in your amendment tonight, and I think we'll need to amend the amendment this evening on the floor in order to make that happen. Is that not correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. So if we could have some action in that regard, that would be great. And we should not have to worry about budgeting again for the this particular cost in the new budget year, but rather roll over these funds to accommodate this agreement. Apologize for that piece.
And so excuse me, Carter, I think that we actually have an amendment, if we understood you right, maybe you said that it needed to be amended. It actually kind of, the one that's before you now has been amended, but you didn't get to see it in your packet because we just amended it this week. So that would be the difference. So I don't know if that's how you configured it, if I just misheard.
Okay, Fleur, you want to add even more clarifying?
Yes, so it's been, the packet we sent out today is new, so if you pull it up online right now, you have the actual correct version. Doesn't need any changes, it's in the packet now, and we resubmitted it to media and everyone, letting them know that that changed.
Okay, so we don't need to amend it on the
Nope,
floor?
nope,
in that
just pass it
regard.
as is, it's already been amended, as long as it hasn't changed when you brought it to our office. So we're good.
Okay. So strike the request for an
Just
action
kidding.
for an amendment, but know that it is different than what we brought to you in work session, at the very least.
By 40K.
By 40K, yep. Which will be rollover dollars for the new budget year, instead of trying to find 40,000 next year. And that is all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, anybody have anything on the agenda tonight, or? And I guess just point out, I know we're establishing a public hearing date, but the microbrew license for Frontier is a new license that's being
Correct.
issued, because they didn't get in time to renew theirs, so they're doing a new liquor license that they'll have in place upon approval without a misstep.
Now, is this the one that had the lease issues?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
And then the Oil City, that's a brand new.
Right. Yes.
Anything else? By the way, I didn't send anybody any emails, but if you do have any Google Play cards, I'll take them out.
I forgot some cards, John.
You helped them buy one.
Yeah.
That was nice of you.
I wasn't supposed to mail those out to that international address?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think next week, I assume Councilman Huber will be here with us, Councilman Cathy will not, but it might be appropriate for us to do a little review of WHAM in our work session during the legislative section. Maybe take 10 minutes to go over what happened or so.
Good. Councilman Huber will not be here tonight, he's out ill.
I will be checking out the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo so that we can report back to the CNF.
Okay. Little do.
Could I write that off on my expense account?
Okay. See you out there in a few minutes, I guess.
Speaking of that, your expense account is not on bills and claims for
Okay, before we begin this evening, I'd like to remind everyone to silence your cell phones. And I will now call the March 3rd, 2020 regular council meeting to order. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, excuse the absence of Councilman Huber.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, second by Councilman Pacheco. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Council meetings are also televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Anybody? Be brave. Awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the February 18th, 2020 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on February 25th of 2020.
So move. Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Powell. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Chair would now entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the February 18th, 2020 executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, second by Vice Mayor Lutz. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the March 3rd, 2020 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Cathy. Any abstentions? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
Now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we ask the following, that you please state your name and address, direct all questions, comments to the mayor and only the mayor. No personal attacks on staff or council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. Questions posed by speakers may or may not be responded to by council members, and presentations will be limited to 5 minutes, and duplication of speakers will not be allowed, nor will time extensions be permitted. So with that said, anybody that wants to come forward? No, sir, this is just communications. If you have questions of the council, this would be the time to come forward and ask about anything that's not on the agenda. If it's a public hearing, you'll have a moment to come up and speak either in favor or against that. But any other issue, you could come forward and talk to us on. Yep.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
We are the owners of Diamond Dolls Salon. We've just recently moved into the Walcott Galleria downtown. And we know that the downtown parking situation has been kind of a problematic thing for everybody. And as new business owners, we just had some different ideas and suggestions and a few comments about some of our ideas for how we can maybe potentially solve some of that stuff as new business owners downtown. I guess the first thing that we've had the biggest problem with is getting like vouchers for the parking garage for our clients. Like the communications that we've had with trying to get the vouchers we haven't really gotten any communication. We've sent multiple emails, calls, messages, gone down there in person. There's never anybody in the office. We haven't received any new emails or things back from anybody. So maybe that's something that can be added to the potential to solve some of that problem, is to make staff more available and better communication with businesses to get vouchers for like customers downtown to be able to park in the parking garage with the vouchers. And then as far as like the two of us as business owners downtown, we still had, again, trying to get parking passes and monthly parking spots in the garage for us has been a little tricky as well. And we've had we're a little hesitant to want to because there's only one option for businesses parking in the parking garage. It's just the flat monthly rate, whether you park there 10 hours a week or 70 hours a week. So to maybe have like some more flexible options to fit different business models based on their needs would maybe attract more businesses downtown and keep businesses downtown. Because we have experienced that the problem with parking downtown, obviously it drives people away. People don't want to, get parking tickets for being out there, and a lot of our appointments end up being, over the 2-hour limit. So we kind of need the additional parking, but we need to be able to communicate with somebody in an office that's actually going to return communications from us, and maybe just having more like payment options and flexibility in the rates for business owners and employees to park in the parking garage, because I don't want to pay the same amount of, the same like cost for a parking spot in the parking garage to park, the 25 to 30 hours that I'm actually operating my business. It's compared to like, another business downtown that's open, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week that, needs a 70-hour parking spot. That's just doesn't seem quite fair, but to have a little bit more flexibility and options to fit different kinds of businesses. And that's pretty much why we were here tonight, was to just kind of bring some ideas and stuff for the downtown parking problem, since we know that's an issue.
Okay. First of all, could I get both your names for the record?
Yes, my name is Amanda Stath, Stath.
My name's Rio Carno, Riocarno.
Okay.
I think
Anybody have any? No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I think,
that was pretty much all of our
Yeah.
comments and stuff, but
Okay.
did you have anything else?
no.
Okay,
No.
we made our list. Thank you.
Any comments from council? Councilman Bates?
Your business is called Diamond Day?
Diamond Dolls.
Diamond Dolls, sorry about that. And what is your business? Just
Oh, we're a hair salon.
Hair salon.
Yeah, we do hair, and she does nails as well.
sweet. Well, thank you for investing. Appreciate it.
Yes, yeah.
We would like to stay down there, it's just,
Yeah, we really like the location downtown, and it's great, but we know the parking is an issue, and it's an issue for everybody, and, get the community and the business owners involved, and that's why we decided we should come down and get involved.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you coming forward. I know there has been some issues with getting a hold of people at the DDA here lately, change of hours and things like that. That's something that we'll definitely be addressing. So we'll make sure that somebody from there gets in touch with you right away to get your vouchers and get some things worked out with you.
Perfect.
Mayor, if I-
Thank you.
Councilman Powell.
Mayor, thank you. I would suggest you folks keep a log of the calls that you've made and the emails that you've sent, so you have some documentation if in fact that's a problem, because if you're having that problem, you're probably not the only one. I guess my other question is, and maybe you reference this, but is street parking an issue for your customers?
Yes. Yeah, it can be. Again, if the major problem downtown is business owners and employees parking on the street all day and exceeding the 2-hour street parking, then that obviously takes parking away from customers and our clients as well. So it does tend to be a problem.
Do you folks have a sense of who the and I don't want names, but is it pretty easily identifiable who is doing
It
this?
depends on the day.
Yeah.
I mean, we did for a while until we, kind of figured out that we
Got
need to
in
not,
there
because that it was a problem. And that was the other thing with the parking garage, is that when we started parking in the parking garage and paying the hourly rate, and then I got like a little notice on my car about that the parking garage hourly parking is for customers only. We'll tow your car, and I'm like, where am I supposed to park? I can't park on the street all day, but I've been having trouble getting parking passes and getting vouchers and getting this, getting it done properly. So what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to get to work and go to work and be able to park my car all day without getting my car towed? So, yeah.
yeah, it really just depends on the day on what common vehicles we seem to see parked out there. But again, we do know of other businesses just within our building that they have had troubles getting a hold of the DDA to get their monthly vouchers or monthly parking or anything like that. So they are having to pay the hourly parking, which, I mean, obviously none of us have a problem with doing. It's just a matter of, well, that gets pretty costly. And
Right.
then she gets that message on her car. So it's like, we can't park on the street, we can't park in the hourly. What are we supposed to do?
Incentivize the parking for businesses.
Yeah.
You know, make it something that's gonna be affordable for small downtown businesses to remain in business downtown. If it's not like an exorbitant amount or anything, but make it flexible and give different options for the different kinds of businesses and what their needs are. Based on, you know, and customers too, obviously, and to like have communication with the public to be able to use the parking garage, because that's what it's there for. So, I think I'm out of thoughts.
Yeah.
If you'll keep that log, and if this continues, I'm sure our city staff would want to know more about this.
Yes, yep, I've got it all recorded, because every time I send an email, I get the same generic response back. I'm not in the office, please contact so-and-so with their email. I email them, I get nothing back. So, yes, I've got all that. Every time that I've gone down there during business hours, that it says that it is open, the door's locked, it says by appointment only, the lights are all off.
But you can't make an
Phone
appointment because
calls.
you can't get a hold of anybody.
Right, phone calls, you know, it's like, we're not in the office, please email, and it's just been this vicious cycle since we
Yeah.
moved down there in September.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, I know you meet with the DDA staff periodically. Would you like to see that log? That these ladies have put together?
Okay, yeah, I can get that for you. Yeah.
Okay, all right, I think we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, sir, we'll have that public hearing coming up here in just a few moments. This is just open to issues such as that anybody wants to talk to council about. Is there anybody else who would like to talk to council about anything that we not have on public hearing tonight? Okay. So we'll move on to establishing dates of public hearings. Please read the consent agenda by title.
Establishing March 17th, 2020 as a public hearing date for consideration of the following two items. 7A1A, microbrewery liquor license number 7 for Oil City Beer Company, LLC, doing business as Oil City Beer Company, located at 4155 Legion Lane, Units 4 and 6. And 7A1B, a new microbrewery liquor license number 4 for Brew Story LLC, doing business as Frontier Brewing Company, located at 117 East 2nd Street.
The chair would entertain a motion to by minute action to establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Councilman Cathy, second by Councilman Bates. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of Garden Creek Square, edition number 2. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you. We have two exhibits tonight. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carter Napier, dated February 14, 2020. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated February 17, 2020.
Mr. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The action that we are asking you for tonight is actually twofold. It approves a vacation as well as a simultaneous replat of the area in question, which will come up on your screen here in a second. The area that we're talking about is commonly referred to as the Garden Creek Square Addition number 2 on the corner of Kaufman and Wyoming Boulevard. The basic idea is that this would be changed from a multi-unit development to a 2-lot development, one of which would be the R4, as we've talked about, and as you'll see here any minute now. The other lot would retain its character as a C2 general business piece of property. And so the idea with respect to the R4 is that, as we've talked about in the past, this would be a development, a 50-unit development, 49-unit development for senior housing. And again, the corner lot, as you see there, is reserved for a C2 type application.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I'd ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving Garden Creek Square Edition Number 2, please approach the lectern.
Good evening, Bill
Evening.
Fehringer with Civil Engineering Professionals, 6080 Enterprise Drive here in Casper. Representing the owner of this parcel, and just wanted to say that back when this was originally developed or platted in the format that you see on your screen, was back in like 1999, and at that time, it appeared to be a pretty good idea for these developments to come in like that. And as you can see, nothing ever really developed on that corner over there. And then here early last year, middle of last year, a organization came in that wanted to put in a multi-unit housing or apartment complex on that corner lot, the C2 lot, for senior citizens. And so with that approval, the owner of the rest of the parcel decided that the layout that they had was not really feasible at this time anymore. And so they want to do is just kind of get rid of that original plat, vacate it back into one large parcel around the apartment complex. And then that way it's kind of a clean slate. So once the apartment building is up, hoping they'll get some more, interest in the rest of that parcel, and it's just kind of a clean slate, and they can start all over with whatever they feel that we can put in there. So that's the reason for this replat. And so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? No?
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of? Okay, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues involving Garden Creek Square Edition Number 2, please approach the lectern.
Bernie Finch, 4391 Sunrise Drive. Not here to fight City Hall or give anyone any grief, but I bought my place in a nice neighborhood, nice view of the mountain. Zoning this to a high-density zoning isn't in my interest. That just creates something taller in my view. I don't think that my house will appreciate appropriately. Even if it does on paper, it certainly won't be as nice for a resale. So I bought my place in mind so that in 10 years when I retire, hopefully get a good sale, get some value, be able to move on. So just for the record, it's not in my best interest. I'm only here speaking for myself. So that's what I got.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else to speak in opposition to? Okay, there being no one or any others to speak for or against the issue involving Garden Creek Square Edition Number 2, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving a replat, subdivision agreement, and zone change for the proposed Garden Creek Square Edition Number 2 subdivision.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, second by Councilman Johnson. Any discussion?
Just maybe so that I understand, the little square that was next to Kaufman and Wyoming Boulevard, that is where the C2 is going to be? Or is that the R4? Sorry, I guess I don't understand. And then the rest of these, sorry, wrong one. The rest of the smaller ones, those are actually going to go away and it'll be a blank slate, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, that is my understanding. The corner property here would remain as C2, and the balance of what you see here would go away and be reconfigured to accommodate the apartment complexes.
Okay, so R4, okay.
Right.
Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Remind me, Mr. City Manager, what are the height restrictions for apartment complexes with that zoning?
Mr. Mayor, do you mind if I defer to Ms. Becker to address?
If she wants you to.
Bill could know, okay. Thanks, Bill.
Bill Farringer here, again. I was just wanting to make a correction there. The single structure apartment complex or building is going to be on that corner lot.
Yeah.
That's the C2. That's where the senior housing apartment will be at. And that's going to be a 3-story apartment building, I believe 49 units. And that's already been approved by planning and zoning and everything. So, but yeah, and then the rest of that is all going to be, like you were saying, it's going to be vacated and be just one large lot. So, but yeah, the apartment building is going to be a 3-story building.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. I'm going to be abstaining out of this as it's a residential development. Are there any other amendments? Okay. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With the abstention of the Mayor Friel noted, motion passed.
Oh, yeah. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of Greenway Park 3 Edition. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 2 exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carter Napier, dated February 14, 2020. And exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated February 17, 2020.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We have a development here that would include the expansion of a development located at the general intersection of 21st and near the preserve apartment area, if you will. The items that are outlined in yellow here, which again will come up here momentarily, are the proposed sites for developments that would be of mixed development as it relates to single-family residential as well as multifamily residential. The items that you see here in yellow indicate the general location of where these developments will take place. Along this area here, we will see single-family residential development, and through here, a mixture of fourplex and duplex type development in those respective areas. The changes that are being recommended this evening would accommodate that type of development and would move forward pursuant to 3 readings of this particular proposal.
Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving Greenway Park 3 Edition, please approach the lectern.
Good evening. Bill Farringer with CEPI, 6080 Enterprise Drive, representing the owner and developer of this parcel since they are from Denver and didn't make the trip up. I was just wondering, do we have the actual plat that we've submitted to that we could put up? Oh, okay. Oh, could you? Oh, okay. Thank you. So, as you can see on this plat that we've got up on the screen now, thank you. The large open area there on the west or the west side of the map there. That's the Primrose Apartments, or the Preserve Apartments, sorry. The Preserve Apartments that are existing there now. The area with all the lots and everything on it, that is the area that is all open and undeveloped at this time between the Preserve Apartments and the Rustic Ridge boundary. The original plat that was shown on the first exhibit that was put up was platted several years ago, and over the years the owner developer looking at that realized that that really wasn't an efficient use of the property, and so we put up a new put together a new platform. And this plat here, it better uses the property. It develops it to a point where you can have more single family and some twin homes. What the intent is along the western tier of those lots, right there. Those would be more twin home style, and zoned. I believe those are zoned R3, and then the interior and the western tier that goes over along the Rustic Ridge boundary, those would be single family homes zoned R2. The lots they're well laid out. They're not small lots, but they're not very large lots, not extremely large lots, but they'll be able to accommodate some very good development in the area. And that's the reason the owner is trying to just get this platted, not looking at starting construction right away, but he's wanting to get this platted so that he can move forward with some plans and take care of this. But it's an area that is it's an infill. It's vacant right now, and so this right here would be a good way to utilize that property and into some nice single family homes. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Yes.
Councilman Cathy.
If I was reading your plat right, that eastern set of lots that butt up against Rustic Ridge, there's there's that 55-foot buffer in there. So does that mean, like, for example, Lot 8 says 183.95, so back off that 55, it's going to be about 128 then?
Correct.
Buildable, usable lot size.
Correct.
Okay.
That 55-foot buffer that we have in there was put in there for two reasons. One is, if you've driven by there, there's a slope that comes off the bottom of that wall. And so that slope is coming in there, and so we wanted to put a buffer, a nice buffer between these new residences and the existing Rustic Ridge property. And we don't want them taking anything off of that slope to try and cause any eroding. We have a note on there that says, there's no construction, no dirt removal, no nothing within that 55-foot buffer. So,
As a follow-up, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
That 55 feet, is that actually the property of that property owner then? So that property owner will be responsible for any maintenance, weed removal? They could plant grass on it, but basically that's the same. You're trying to set that up as though it were an easement to where they cannot build on it.
that is correct. Right, they can landscape on it, but they can't take any, move any dirt, and they can't build on it. So, but it is their property.
Okay, and they could put a fence on it, they could put trees on it, they could do,
Yes.
okay. Just want to make sure everybody was clear on what
Right.
what could and could not be done with that 55 feet.
Okay.
And who was responsible for it.
Yes, that lot owner is responsible.
Councilman Hopkins.
A question for Mr. Farringer. It looked, when you look at it on the map, it's kind of tough to tell, but it looks like originally there was going to be a traffic circle at the intersection of, in addition to one that's there on Jasper, just off of 21st. It looks like there was a partial construction of one at the end of Pinion Way now. Does that go away?
You're talking about like as you pull into the Preserve Apartments?
Yeah, you can see where it stubs out, but.
As you look at that plat that's up on the screen, there on that lower left-hand corner there, you can see where it kind of curves around, with those lots kind of curve around there.
Yeah.
That's accommodating that roundabout or traffic circle that's there now.
All right, thank you.
So there'll be another, they'll come around that, so those lots stay away from that. So, but that will remain.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would wish to speak in favor of? Okay, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues involving Greenway Park 3 addition to please approach the lectern.
Hi.
Good
My
evening.
name is Vicki Primrose, and I'm the president of the HOA of Rustic Ridge. This issue has come here before, and I know that, everybody knows this is the second time around they've been trying to do this. I spoke at the Planning Commission, and I don't think I probably was strong enough, but I'm going to try to do that this time. I don't know if everybody has been out to look at this site, but this site is actually a very large drainage area. So there's going to be a lot of dirt that's going to be moved because it's a huge natural drainage area. And I'm not sure the developer is going to be able to solve that problem by putting homes in there. All of our Rustic Ridge residents on the west side bought those homes. They've been there for 20-some years, and they have absolutely fabulous views. I know that that doesn't mean anything to most people, but it does to those people. And if we allow all of that construction to build up there, they're going to lose that, which means their house is going to devalue. So are all the other 69 homes in Rustic Ridge. And we've all bought up there and put our life in there, and now it's like, it doesn't seem to matter. It's going to depreciate everybody's value. That 55, I might need an explanation, but the 55-foot, I think that also includes 50, some of them are down and then come out. I don't think it's 55 feet. I think it starts at the top. And then if it's 25, they only have to go out 25. So those houses are going to be right in their backyard. And I know that I would like to, I'd love to stop this project. I know I probably can't. But then I would like to see some work talk to the developers. But the problem is that I understand it's not going to be one developer. He's just going to sell the lots off, and anybody can build. So there's going to be no HOA, there's not going to be any rules and regs, but if you could keep these homes to one level that are adjacent to Rustic Ridge, that would be very helpful. I don't know if anybody can do that. And then you mentioned about the trees and things. If they build, put huge trees, there goes all of the people who live in the west side, that's gone. Their views are gone. And now they've got trees, and I really feel like this is being kind of like pushed through, and I don't like the way that it's been handled, because this has been talked about before, and now it's like it's already cut and dried. So I can tell you that there's 69 homes up there, and we're not real happy with it. And if they start building, you say single family, but that could be a 2-story home plus a basement. So we're talking they could be looking right into somebody's yard. So, or in their backyard. And, maybe they want a suntan, I don't know. But anyway, I would like your consideration to at least maybe table this and let this go back, and maybe we can look at some other options. It's not that we know it's not going to happen. It's just that maybe we need to address how it's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks to me like you guys all have a 6-foot fence behind your house, is that correct? It's a barrier fence?
It's a stone fence.
Stone fence, yeah. And your elevation is approximately 40 feet higher than where they're going to be building?
No, like the homes on the 21st side, on the 21st Street, they are level with what's coming with their land. There's no drop off there. There's only a drop off at the other end, and it's not 40 feet. So they're actually on the same level. The only drop-off is at probably the last 6 houses. So, and I think that's not I think that includes that 50, they say 55 feet. I think that includes that.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
I don't know.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Paul Wilhelm. I live at 1922 Rustic Drive. A couple things that maybe you can help clarify. On the notice that we got for the planning and zoning and also the one here, it does not match the plat that you're looking at currently. The one that is on the notice has a highway or a road going next to the barrier drive. So I'm wondering, are we looking, and which one are you voting on? So you know, we can talk about it.
Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the picture that you see before you is what you would be voting on.
Why did we get this notice?
From whom did you receive that notice?
City of Casper, Community Development Department, 200 North David, room 205.
Yeah.
And this is the one in the POZ.
Please.
We had addressed that at the planning commission meeting. I know Councilman Hopkins was at that meeting.
Okay, Paul, we addressed that with Heidi and you at the planning
Yeah, I
commission
know,
meeting.
but you're still bringing it up here.
And
Mayor, point of order, could you have staff speak through the mayor instead of having a sidebar conversation?
okay, we had addressed that with the planning commission meeting with the postcards that were sent out and clarified that what was presented on those postcards did match the documents that were presented.
Okay. Mr. City Manager, once again, I guess the question that I would have, I think in our packets, we have this layout here and not the one that we see before us. So I guess the question, I think we all would have the same question, is if we're voting on this tonight, the packet, what we've had up until this point tonight has been the very first one that you showed to us.
Did you give that one?
No.
Yeah, the one I have in the packet is this one.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. But this is the.
Oh, it's a new package. Not what was in the original.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's Bill Farringer again. The explanation that was given at planning is that what went out on the postcard is what they were, is what is existing there now, is the way it's platted at this time. And that's what the staff at that time said was, you know, that's what they have to put out because that's existing, and that's what, you know, they're more looking at the area that they're platting. They couldn't put the new plat out because it doesn't exist yet. So, anyhow, that was the explanation that was given at planning.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Page 105 in your packet is more reflective of what you see here. And again, would be what you're voting on.
Couple other concerns that, just to bring this forward. Obviously, one of the things that is a value is view. Everyone likes a view of X, Y, and Z, mainly the mountain. And that's an intangible value cost, but I can tell you, being in the real estate industry, it's real. And it does affect things. I'd like to, since we're back on this other plat, I'd like to reference the interior comments just to make sure we're clear for Councilman Cathy's question of Mr. Farringer, that there is not to be any, according to this, no structures allowed, and where's it at? In the non-disturbance area, the whole idea there was the trees. If you start adding in trees, they would block everything along the way. Second thing is because it's zoned R2, one of the things that, Mr. Collins and I were talking about at the time, I guess, unbeknownst to me, was that I guess you can get up to a 4-level, 4-story property in an R2 zoned deal. So once you do that, and on the topography of that, about the first 5 or 6 houses from 21st over, you're on a flat, nearly the same level surface coming back. So you could build 2 or 3 stories back in there. I don't know who would, but you have that ability to. The thing that I think at the end of the day, we've got what we come to understand from conversations with the developer is that, as Vicky pointed out, he's going to develop the PUD, offer the rest for sale. Along those lines, as maybe a small minor compromise at this point with him, maybe we split this lot up and let him proceed with the PUD, and let's devote some more time and energy toward trying to figure out how we can keep the levels of the house down on those that are residing directly behind that wall. That way everybody can go into it with a happy face instead of having 69 residents that are having trouble with it, because it's going to affect everybody's value if we have some poor construction along that ridge on the other side of that wall, and it's going to affect it significantly. Those are just some thoughts to consider. Okay.
Any questions? Councilman Bates.
Mr. Paul, if you don't mind me asking real quick. And this is, I hear what you're saying. I just want to go hypothetical, so if you'll work with me on this a little bit. If you have not bought your house at Ridgecrest and you have an opportunity to buy the land and design the house that you would like on one of these properties, and I don't know if yours is a 2-story, 3-story, whatever, but if you had an opportunity, not knowing that it affect Ridgecrest, would you build it the way that you want it? If you wanted 2 stories, would you go ahead and do that?
I think without appropriate guidelines for that area, you're talking about 11 or 12 lots there along that ridge before you have the steep drop-off. So those are the only of homes that are affecting that whole development. In Rustic Ridge, you have about 9 or 10 along that fence.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are, all of them, there's only 1 2-story in the whole subdivision of 1 or 2 that have multi-level that I'm aware of. And those are not on the view side, they're in the back. The things that do come up with building, and I'm all about real estate development. I'm fine with it. I love selling it. I do it every day. But together, we got to make sure things like, we got to make sure the sewer line is deep enough. We got to make sure a lot of those things happen when you're designing this subdivision, because if you have only an 8-foot sewer line the drop by putting in a basement in a house lifts that house out of the ground in order to have a positive flow into that drain. So we got to all work together to make sure we have the right thing when you start building these things, or else we're gonna have a mess. That's where I was wanting. I know he's wanting to build a PUD. That's fine. Just split that lot in half and approve the PUD now, and let's work on the balance of it to make sure we do the appropriate things we need to, that would make everybody a little happier. That's all I was asking. Any other questions?
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Hi there, I'm Heidi Wilhelm. I live at 1922 Rustic Drive, and I am affected on that side of the plat as far as views go. I'm also vice president of the Homeowners Association, and so believe you me, our phone has been ringing off the hook. I have not had one resident excited about having this change of being moved from PUD down to the R3 and R2. And the reason is because we could put up with a building here or there around a parking lot, but when you have an entire row along your fence line, it's going to be a solid row of roofs instead of an occasional where you can look out. So I'm here to ask you not to approve this and to keep the PUD. If you will go back to your first plot that you were given, which is what all of us were given as well, and that's what we thought was still going to be happening. The road was going along the fence line, and that was acceptable to us because the building of the roofs wouldn't be blocking all of our views. But the developer is looking purely for a financial gain, and by putting more lots than along the fence line and moving the road, then he can make more money. I think that that's a very sad thing because we did buy this house because of the sunset view. I grew up in Riverton on Sunset Boulevard, so that was the only thing I really wanted in this resident area. Many of those homes are $500,000 to $1 million homes. This is not something that these homeowners have taken lightly to invest in along that ridge. On our particular lot that backs up, it's only a 10-foot drop. So if you think on our easement of the 55-foot, that's 10 foot below us. So the average height of a new construction is easily a 10-foot wall. So then you'd add a roof on top of that, and most everybody is developing your cathedral ceilings. So you can see with the 10-foot plus another cathedral ceiling on top, you're really not going to have a view out. I am concerned again about building trees. I would request that they only build shrubs instead of trees in that 55 easement as well. Now, whether that's something you can do, I don't know. Chances are, if this goes through, we will probably move. I don't know if we'll even stay in Casper. It's hard to say with these lovely, windy, snowy days that we've been accumulating this winter. Hasn't made us really want to stay here. It's the views like that we have keep us here. I think about the homes in the country club area and all along their lines and the views that they have and the mountain views, and I feel like if people were to build a whole row of houses right in front of that, what they have lost with their investment, and I feel the same way about this as well. And I really think it would be a shame because we do have a lot of nice neighborhoods, and I just feel like they're one by one getting stripped away by these things that people are trying to approve, and purely for the sense of money, and that's it, not cosmetic or what the people want. So I'm here to encourage you guys not to vote for that and to keep the PUD as we had it. Thank you.
Any questions?
Kirk, 2724 Alley Circle. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
I've got one of these postcards as well, not being very clear on, there's a line drawn, and I would expect that it was probably anybody that may be visually impacted by these changes. And I think that all the landowners have valid reasons along there to not want development. Growth is inevitable. I'm on a lower elevation there, and even though it is not depicted on here, there is a seasonal creek along there that is owned by the city, undeveloped, along with a field. I'm not sure where the border or property line of the city ends or begins through that area. What I could see here with this improvement is that possibly with such a large tract of land, that there be some kind of stipulation into maybe not a high maintenance, but a way to control the area that's through this creek, because there's one time 4 years ago when it all flash flooded and there was a lot of erosion. And if that's a typical thing that can be stipulated in such a large tract transaction, that it improved the city visually, and as it is being encroached by this growth, we may lose the opportunity for these improvements. And so it's not really an opposition to it, but what it is that from a lower elevation, I would like to see improvements through that benefits the city. And I'm all for trees.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition to? There being no others to speak for or against the issues involving Greenway Park Number 3 addition, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving a vacation, replat, subdivision agreement, and zone change for the proposed Greenway Park 3 addition subdivision.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, second by Vice Mayor Lutz. Any discussion? Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look at this, it looks like the majority of it is at a slightly lower elevation than the houses that are up in Rustic Ridge. And I understand that it's very nice to have a nice view from your house. But, you know, the way to ensure that is to make sure that you own property that can't ever be bought unless they want to buy it from you, to take care of that view. And with the idea of some good infill properties with some nice homes, and we don't dictate the price of homes, that's done by the market and what you build. I just think this is really a good infill project for the city of Casper, and I think we ought to go ahead as planned. Another item that comes up, and it was originally proposed as a PUD, the whole idea of a PUD is to have a lot of flexibility in what you do inside the borders of a PUD. Here that's kind of narrowed a little bit, and we know pretty much what's going to happen. Now, it doesn't mean they can't change some lot lines at one time or another, but I think this is a pretty good plan, so I'll support it.
Councilman Cathy.
Yes. To a point, I faced some of those similar types of things when I moved to Casper in '91. But I stopped and I looked at the long-range plan, which said that 21st was actually supposed to cut all the way straight through to Outer Drive. As it doesn't do that now, but that's what it was supposed to do. And I looked at the street widths and I said, I don't want to live on one of those types of streets. And when I actually built my house in '91, at the end of Cornwall, I was the house across the street from me was the last house on that end of the street and on that part of the city. And when you came around Outer Drive and dropped down that hill heading east on Outer Drive, right there by Country Club, you could look out across all of that vacant land and see my house. And there was no 21st Street except from Cornwall to Brighton. There was no Newport that even ran all the way to 21st Street. There was no Centennial Hills. There was nothing out there. And even the two houses across the street from me weren't there. And we used to sit in our front yard and could see the whole mountain. And we could watch the antelope drop their young out there in that field. But this is progress. And if you want this city to grow, these things are going to happen. And I know right now one of the trees in my backyard is blocking a bunch of view from the people. And my neighbors to the south, which is the last line of houses to the south, their trees have grown up in between their houses. And that is life, and that is the way vegetation grows. And so I guess one of the things, when they did come in and put Clifton in, which is the next street west of Cornwall, there were people that did exactly what this lady said over here. They sold their houses and moved. But that subdivision, for these same reasons of you're blocking my view, that subdivision went through. And that's what's going to happen here. And people need to be looking, just as Councilman said before me, that look at what you're buying, look at where you're building, and take some responsibility for what you buy. We have had people come here that have had what they thought was going to be a park, and they have used it as their personal park. But I don't ever see the city building a park at the corner of Outer Drive and 21st Street. But we get pushed back every time that is looked at. But how many of you would like to have a kid playing in a park at the corner of 21st and Outer Drive? I don't want my kids there. We need to move on and realize that there is going to be progress. We harp about wanting to keep our kids here, wanting to grow the city. These are some of those things that are going to happen. And you can ask some of the realtors here that I'm not always the best friend of a realtor, but by the same token, we do have to have progress, and that's part of what this is. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, are there any engineering concerns regarding drainage or the things that have been brought up as far as the depth of the sewer lines, et cetera? I assume we've looked at this and everything is fine as far as the water getting through that property? And
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, to our knowledge, there are none of those concerns.
But we have looked at them.
As a part of the plat development process, that is some of the things that are discussed and evaluated and so on. Certainly as it relates to the design of each of the homes and the way that they lay out individually, that'll also be another layer of questioning as well. But yes, indeed, they have been evaluated.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Lutz.
Councilman Hopkins said a lot of the things that I was going to say, but I would just point out that putting restrictions on these lots as far as insinuating that they could only be one-story homes and that they can't have trees and all of these other things, even though the houses adjacent to them had those rights, I guess is what I would say, had the right to build a two-story home. They might not have. They might have chosen to build a single-story home, but the zoning allowed them to build a two-story home. It allowed them to plant trees so that over time they'd have natural shade and wildlife and all of these things that we love in this community. So I think it would be beyond unfair to say that, well, because there's existing homes next to it, these homeowners should have reduced rights for what they can build and what they can invest in. And I guess the only thing I'd say on the financial gain, to insinuate that the developer's doing things, I guess, in a bad way because they're gaining financially, to argue that the developer doesn't have the right to make a financial gain on his investment, but then to, on the other hand, argue that you're losing appreciation and value in your home. I mean, we're talking about the same thing. You deserve to have the right to have the gain and the appreciation in your home, but the developer also deserves the right to gain in his investment. This is a capitalist economy. So that's all I have to say.
Any other discussion? Okay, any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With the abstention of Mayor Friel noted, motion passed.
And now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of Kensington Heights number 1. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Your Honor. Two exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carter Napier, dated February 14, 2020. And exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated February 17, 2020.
Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Another development under consideration at this point, and with respect to individual coming forward who would like to build some more homes and so forth in our area. At this point, we're talking about the area adjacent to Country Club Road and Wyoming Boulevard. The Kensington Heights addition is proposing to, at full build-out, develop 229 acres. And as a part of this process is also requesting a vacation of the current PUD as reflected here, and proposing a replat as well as a zoning classification of our R2 designation. A distinction that council will need to be aware of with regard to this approval at this stage in the process, which of course is our first reading. A subdivision agreement has not been completed at this point in time, but indeed will be a part of your evaluation as we proceed through the reading process past this point. And so with that in mind, council will note that indeed you'll have an opportunity to evaluate the subdivision agreement at a later reading.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving Kensington Heights, number 1, please approach the lectern.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Lisa Burridge. I'm here representing Kensington Development, 421 South Center Street. Perhaps the best thing to do would be to put up the current plat. A couple things about what we're going to discuss tonight. First of all, we're talking about a parcel in total of 50 acres, not 229 acres. He may have meant to say 229 lots, and maybe at one point that was the case. But our estimate of what might be future build out wouldn't be more than probably 150 lots. And so to try to get some perspective on the size of this, what we're bringing forth before you is a previously approved plat that was called the Cambridge Edition, which was part of the overall Centennial Hills subdivision and the whole area that was part of the 402 LLC that started up in the late 1990s. And I think it's important that since we're talking about things like zoning and PUDs and interesting history, I suppose one piece of history, I couldn't tell really if Mr. Cathy was referring to you as not being his favorite realtor or maybe me. Not entirely certain, but so we won't go into that history right this second, but the rest of the history that I think we should go into is the fact that in the 1990s, a group of people, not myself included, I was not included in this, brought forth the whole Centennial Hills basic layout, and it was all a PUD. The entire 402 acres was brought in as a planned unit development. And back then, that was the cool buzzword: smart growth, calming, traffic calming patterns, and that kind of thing was all part of what was part of this PUD concept. Just so you guys are all really clear, the PUD concept is no longer a favorite of the planning department here at the city of Casper. And so anytime any of us would be to mention something about a PUD, it's never very well received. So fast forward, the developer that has most recently been involved in the latest portions of the development of the Centennial Hills area, the Gosfield Village was the most recent area, is not me. I want to make sure everybody gets it. I've been called by the city about traffic problems and snow removal problems and parking problems and so forth, and I want to make sure everybody gets it that that is history, and that was a developer by the name of Peg Ingram. I worked closely with her and sold her lots, but I was never that developer, okay? Now we can fast forward. Peg Ingram, decided that she no longer wanted the headaches of developing in the city limits of Casper. And I think that's really kind of sad. That's a testament of the fact that sometimes people start and after 40 years they've had more fun than they can stand potentially, and that's unfortunate. Things change, as you guys said, and this is a change. So Peg decided that she wanted to sell her remaining 54 acres of land, and she offered to my partners, Jason Lewis, Nat Steinhoff, if we wanted to buy the parcel of land. So we purchased from her this 50 acres. We came to the planning department. We talked in great length with the engineering department, planning department, and so forth. And of course, the first thing that was brought up was, would there be a way that we could abandon the PUD? So that's what we're here to do, is to bring forward a zone change recommendation to R2. I think the people that are here need to understand that PUD allows people to do some wild and crazy stuff. And so if people want really more control, a PUD is not the way to go. So abandoning a PUD is really a good idea. And we agree with that. So we're here to rezone this to R2. The very first portion of this development is about, I think it's 26 lots. There's a huge difference between what you see on the map in front of you that's on the east side, or the right side of your map, and what we're proposing, in that our new plat has regular width, street widths. There's not any weirdness with no parking on one side of the street. There's no strangeness with the really skinny streets. There's no weirdness with traffic calming oddball things that don't really work. And there's no requirement for us to have to continue on with the homeowners association that was attached to the rest of the Centennial Hills area. So you might hear from people tonight that it's a real crime to change zoning, that if you bought somewhere along that street there, along Boots Drive potentially, you might hear that somebody was worried that it's no longer PUD, and that's just completely foolish. I mean, people don't go buy a house and say, I wonder if that's going to stay PUD or change. I mean, to Mr. Cathy's point, people buy land and things change. The benefits of us doing the changes that we're talking about here, besides the things that we've mentioned, there have been complaints with regard to this street widths in the other development because of construction traffic. I think that our plat addresses a lot of that and makes the traffic flow a lot easier. The additional housetops will also eliminate a whole lot of the drifting issues that happen on Boots Drive that you guys get called, the city, not you guys, but the city gets calls about probably weekly about the drifts that are on those skinny streets. And then there's problems because people don't follow the rules of the homeowners association that's over there. So with that in mind, I'm happy to answer any questions. I have lots of things to say, but I feel like with Mr. Cathy's history lesson, I think most people are probably pretty clear now on the changes that happened. And this started off being a PUD, and it really, there shouldn't be any more PUDs in the city, in my opinion.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The one, and it's not a question, it's a comment, but building this won't help the drifts on Boots Drive. All it does is rearrange them. Because all of that building to the west of me, all it did was rearrange the drifts across Cornwall and in my yard. So
fair enough.
Don't plan on it necessarily doing that. It just, like I said, it rearranged them.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of? At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues involving Kensington Heights, number 1, please approach the lectern.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor,
Good evening.
Mr. Manager. I want to make it clear, we're not here in opposition to anything. What we want to do is try and protect the people, the 500 homes on the other side of this, from blowing debris and terrible situations. My name's Joe Toops.
My name is Dean Brennan.
We're here representing the Centennial Hills Homeowners Association. We're a group of 500 homes that abut the development that you're considering tonight. And thank you for considering our concerns, because we abut that development and we're downwind of it in a tornado alley situation there. The wind up there is horrific. So we're not here to oppose the development. We do have concerns considering we are directly downwind of those new neighborhoods. So anything that happens will have a huge impact on us. Again, we're downwind in an extremely windy area. Our concerns are mainly blowing trash, airborne construction debris, and dirt storms. This project's going to take years to build out, and our members shouldn't have to suffer through it if the developers don't do their due diligence. We would like a special attention for these issues. Dumpsters, if they can have lids or tarps, the big construction dumpsters, anything you put in them during the day is going to be gone that night, and it's going to be in my yard, a block or two down. Right now, we're picking up a lot of construction trash daily from the last 4 homes that are developing in my neighborhood. And daily, it's an issue. Thank God they're almost done there, but this is going to be right up the street from that. So dumpsters, I don't know if that's a city ordinance or not, that you have to have lids or tarps or something, because you throw cardboard in a dumpster around here, it's coming out that night. So blowing dirt, these are going to be some huge excavations up there, along with the 10 acres of commercial property that's going in. If the dirt contractors can do what they can to mitigate dirt storms, because they're bound to happen. I don't know if just watering more, or I don't know what a dirt contractor can do, but they need to do it, because we are just on the leeward side of that. I was wondering if they'd done any current traffic studies up there, because they'll be dumping a lot more traffic into an already congested neighborhood that's kind of dangerous as it is. 24-foot wide streets, they shouldn't have ever been approved, but they're there, so we're working with it. It sounds like the streets in the new area are going to be wider than that, so that takes care of that issue. Do they have a covenants and PUD in line with the existing neighborhood, or will it be just kind of a free-for-all, everybody building their own styles and their own, which will kind of deflect from the aesthetic value that we have up there now, and have an impact on our price of our homes. Also, the drainage issues, has anybody addressed any drainage issues up there? Because right now, the street I live on, Croydon Drive, we've had flash floods on it, and it heads down to a drainage ditch that is right down there. I've seen 6 inches of water in that street, and I've watched that drainage ditch turn from a stream to a raging whitewater river. And someday it's going to wash out that bridge right down there. That little dirt bridge is going to go away. I've seen mattresses floating down there, and it happened really quickly. So I warn all the kids in the neighborhood, if you're going to play in that ditch, be careful. So this is going to dump more water onto that street, and I'm just hoping they're doing their due diligence when it comes to drainage issues also. I'd just like to thank you for considering these items. Like I said, we're not here to oppose development. We just want to look forward to having a productive dialogue with the city, the developers, an outcome that we can all live with. In this neighborhood, we have a grade school, a junior high school, several policemen, fire, EMS personnel, 3 city council meeting members, including the mayor, and several city and state employees. But they're part of 500 other houses, which is 1,000 adults, and will be impacted if they don't do their diligence on a 2x2 piece of plywood blowing in a 60, 70 mile an hour breeze that came out of a construction dumpster can kill you. It can kill a child. We have a lot of children in the neighborhood. I want to make sure that they're protected, that these neighbors along Boost Drive aren't being pelted with gravel and sand, and it's going to take years. And I've had a lot of concern from a lot of the neighbors, but that's pretty much all we have. We're not really here to oppose any progress. We just want to make sure it's done nicely and we aren't affected by it and have to suffer through it.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I leave a couple copies of this with the clerk so that
Sure.
just so you guys know what we're talking about here?
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Charmaine Reed, and I live at 2782 Boots, which is the property that Ms. Burridge sold to me. And at the time she sold it, she gave every indication that she was the developer. So I was surprised to hear her convey to you that she was not the developer. I'm not here to oppose progress either. I am here to object to this rezone. One of the things you said was that when you bought your property was, you know, look at what you're buying. So if we can't look at the recorded instruments to know what we're buying, how would we look to see what we're buying? This PUD was recorded, and that should be meaningful. Someone shouldn't be able to come in after the fact and decide, oh, the streets are too narrow here, so we're going to completely undo this. And not just undo it, but increase the density and mess with the whole neighborhood. One of the things that I think is important to consider is this is part of a phased PUD. And what does that mean? I mean, it's phased. That means it's part of the whole PUD. And the whole PUD, part of it's already built. And that means this part is part of that puzzle. It all goes together. It's one PUD. This is whatever phase. One of the things I wanted to point out is the ordinance, the developers seem to be trying to make this, oh, it's an innocuous change. And even looking at the title of the ordinance, replat, zone change, and subdivision agreement, okay, that doesn't sound bad. What it needs to say is termination of a PUD, because that's what it's doing first, terminating a PUD that people relied on. It's a zoning issue, which is good. You don't have to just say, oh, that's what the rules say, they did it, so we have to say okay. Zoning, you can use your discretion. You can decide whether or not something that's filed should be meaningful or not. And so I am here to object to the PUD termination, and I would appreciate you using your discretion and voting no on moving the ordinance. Thanks.
Any questions? Is there anyone else to speak in opposition to? Okay, there being no others to speak for or against the issues involving Kensington Heights Number 1, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving a replat, subdivision agreement, and zone change for the proposed Kensington Heights Addition Number 1.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved. Second?
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, second by Councilman Hopkins. Any discussion? Councilman Hopkins.
I think Mr. Tooth brought up some good points, which we always have problems when we're building a new construction area. Gosh knows we've had enough wind between the beginning of December and the middle of March, so to speak, that this has been a little higher average wind speed than we take it. However, I think within the group, the administrative group that we have in staff, our inspectors try and get out there and look at it, and from time to time, I do know that our people have in fact told contractors that this has to be cleaned up. And I think that, well, I'm not sure everybody will use covered roll-offs, but it's something that needs to be policed, but I think it's kind of a routine matter for our staff to do that. Nobody likes construction garbage blown into their backyard. I know several years ago we had some significant issues with sand blowing in backyards, and that was a big issue, and it was addressed. But during construction, there's going to be a bit of a mess at times. But I think our people do have some way to handle that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Powell.
Mr. City Manager, don't we have some standards that we hold developers to as far as the height of dirt piles, et cetera, and we don't require them to be covered, but they can only be so high, if I remember correctly. Can we reassure these folks that those standards will be upheld and monitored? Because I understand what they're saying, and Councilman Hopkins is correct. We've had this happen with virtually every new development, and it's a real problem, and I understand what these folks are worried about.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, indeed, there are a number of standards as it relates to the keeping of the construction site and so forth. Certainly erosion control is a big part of that, in that new construction often does bring the opportunity for wind-carried dirt and debris. So certainly contractors are aware what those standards are. We do have folks that routinely check in on these sites to make sure that those standards are being maintained. You bet.
And then as a follow-up, I'm trying to follow this as best I can. Could we, in just layman's language, describe what is the major change from going from a PUD to this zoning change? And what would be lost in going from a PUD to this new zoning, if anything? Because obviously there are folks that have some concerns.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, we could certainly put a memo together that would detail in much greater fashion what some of those changes are. One of the changes that is primary among what it is that the developer is proposing and what we're used to seeing on the opposite side of the PUD in question is with regard to street widths. That's definitely one of the major features of the changes that are being proposed tonight. So if it pleases the council, I'd probably prefer to put that in a memo so that you could see that in more detail than what I'm prepared to deliver to you by memory right now, if I could.
I'd appreciate it if we do that. Is there also a way, because I know that there's obviously citizens that would probably like the same information as far as what, because a PUD is wide open. And so I think by being able to put that out there, it might answer a lot of people's questions as to why this change would be taking place and how it could be potentially beneficial.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I may just follow up, so are we saying then that with the PUD that was in place, there was more latitude for the developer to play around with road widths, and that would not be allowed under this change?
Mr. Mayor and Councilman Powell, the impetus behind a PUD development is to vary from some of the stricter guidelines that a zoning classification and those respective building standards typically require. And so certainly with regard to this PUD, those kinds of flexibilities were captured, but they were captured with regard to the elements of the PUD that was recorded originally. And so indeed what's being requested this evening, and as we saw in the previous requests as well, that PUD is proposed to be abandoned, and the more typical guidelines that are consistent with an R2 zoning classification are being asked to be adopted with this phase of development. And indeed, we can capture what it is those differences are as it relates to moving into an R2 designation.
So again, if I may for follow-up, again, trying to understand this, so we're essentially holding to the developer to a higher standard, if I'm hearing this.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, it would appear to me that when you move from a PUD that's designed to capture greater flexibility, that you are narrowing the scope, if you will, to a more traditional understanding of a zoning classification, and in this case, an R2. So yeah, I do think there is a narrowing of the scope.
Thank you.
Councilman Hopkins.
Yeah, one of the significant differences between generally what's considered a PUD and what is a design neighborhood is that in many cases in a PUD, it never comes before, what you're building never really comes before Planning and Zoning Commission. they have flexibility within a PUD to make modifications without coming before P&Z or becoming before council. So in fact, a PUD gives the contractor and the builder or the developer a lot more flexibility. And this way, we're looking at something that's a little more nailed down by abandoning the PUD.
Councilman Cathy.
If you really sit and look at the plat, you are getting a wider street than is in the rest of the Centennial Hills area. Also, if you look at lot size, which something was mentioned there, along Boots Drive, there are 6 lots there, where along Lambert, there are only 5. So you're actually getting bigger lots in that part than what's existing there. So those things as well should actually help out property value, not detract from them. And I guess, again, everybody that lives in Centennial Hills, I put up with all of your trash and all of your wind-blown dirt from the day they started building 21st Street and any street west of Cornwall. So, again, these are things that happen when you build, when somebody builds and there's vacant land upwind of you. It's, you know, you don't plow snow upwind because it turns around and blows it right back in. You plow snow downwind. Unfortunately, they've started building downwind and are building upwind. I don't know whether we can wind up with some kind of a quick install net for the dumpsters that are out there while they're sitting there, but I know that when they come to pick them up, all of our trucks have the fold-up netting to go over them so they don't string the trash down the road, but I don't know whether there is an easy way to put a roll-up on the side of it the way they do on some of the grain trucks, for example, so that they can load the grain trucks out in the fields and then cover it over while they're hauling the grain into the elevators and things. But that's something that potentially we could look at, to where contractor can come out, open it up halfway, throw his stuff in, close it up at night, and try to minimize some of it. But that's something we could possibly talk to public service about. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilman Bates.
My only comment is thank you for those that want to develop in Casper, willing to put your money in and develop it better. Thank you for that. And then anytime we can get wider streets, I'm all for that. So.
Councilman Cathy.
Mr. Mayor, talking about some of the unfortunate incidences that come along with building, there was actually even one realtor that got flooded when they were building 21st Street through. So, you know, those things happen, and it's unfortunate when they do, but yeah, we had one of those big gully washers. Nick came along and flooded a few houses while 21st Street was under construction.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just have one more question. Do we have, is there a way that the residents of Booth Drive could have access to the standards that developers are held to as far as management of the construction area and what they're responsible to do as far as managing their trash and the dirt?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Powell, I would say that an easy way to provide that information would be to respond to a number of the questions that were presented by Mr. Toops tonight, and indeed provide that response material to Mr. Toops, again, who could very easily convey that to the members of his HOA. And so if that's okay with council, we'd be pleased to proceed in that direction.
I think that would be a wise move. Understanding that no amount of care of the site is going to prevent all dirt and sand and gravel from blowing into other people's properties. That's just an impossibility in Casper, but we should do everything we can to lower the impact.
Any other discussion? Any amendments? Okay, please cast your vote. In a minute. And please record the vote.
With the abstention of Mayor Friel noted, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of fiscal year 2020 budget amendment number 2. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Your Honor. We have, again, 2 exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Tom Pitlick to J. Carter Napier, dated February 20, 2020. And exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated February 20, 2020.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As we've discussed in work session recently, we are asking for your approval via resolution with regard to an amendment to the fiscal year 20 budget that we're currently engaged in. You're aware that the aspect of this amendment includes a $14 million adjustment, if you will, as it relates to the spending authority that was originally designated with the original passage of the fiscal year 20 budget. A number of the projects that are included with regard to this amendment include funding for the river project, of which you realize is a fairly significant expenditure, as you are aware, and as we've discussed. Another significant investment will be with regard to the replacement of the ice plant at the rec center that is captured in this amendment. The City Hall project is another project that will be authorized with regard to this amendment. The golf course clubhouse that we've talked about recently would be authorized with this amendment, as well as a number of purchases through the SRO relationship that we have with the school district, funding of which was largely made available through the school district and that partnership. Between those projects that we've identified here, you've captured a vast lion's share with respect to the context of this amendment. Council is aware that there is a modicum of new money that's being requested, $40,000 of which we discussed in pre-meeting before coming out here to the floor today. Some other smaller pieces would be with respect to the funding that is being made available to Visit Casper for the CNFR efforts as well, which we discussed in work session last week also. And so with that, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, we're hopeful that indeed you view this as a reasonable approach to dealing with the authority necessary to make these funds available for the efforts and initiatives that we are trying to capture here. Thank you.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of budget amendment number 2, please approach the lectern. All right, and at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to budget amendment number 2 to please approach the lectern. There being no one to speak for or against budget amendment number 2, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by resolution, authorize the fiscal year 2020 budget amendment number 2.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Powell, seconded by Councilman Cathy. Any discussion? Any amendments?
Mr. Mayor, I just think since we're being televised and there may be people watching here, maybe a couple of things that we should make sure people understand. We had some serious, these are all matters that have been discussed previously and approved previously, so all we're doing is making our budget line up with those prior decisions that have all been made in public. But just to make sure people are aware, a couple of these major items, the ice plant is a major project that is badly needed because the ice plant is in the process of failing and has failed, and we're holding it together with baling wire, is the saying people use. And we're going to be able to fix that, and we're going to use some of the perpetual care fund money that is essentially the principle in the endowment that we've established for maintenance of our 1 cent facilities. But in this case, it makes sense to invest some of that money in an ice plant that's going to serve us for the next 40 years and get our staff out of this position of worrying if they're going to be able to keep ice at the ice arena, since the old ice plant is well past its expected expiration date or fail date. And then I think it's also worth noting that we're moving forward with the safety improvements to the City Hall and upgrades to City Hall, and using some of the revolving land fund money that we have recouped through the sale of the Plains building, among other things, and that this is also a very appropriate thing that's long overdue for a facility that's well over 40 years old and was designed at a time when we didn't have the same safety concerns that we have now. And so, yes, this is a big number, but those are just a couple of the big ticket items that are part of this project, and I think it's important for people to know that we've given this some very thoughtful consideration, and we believe that these decisions were appropriate at the time, and they are obviously appropriate now as we need to balance our budget and make things line up according to those decisions. Thank you.
Councilman Cathy.
Mr. Mayor, since we are being televised and Councilman Powell brought up the chiller at the ice arena being replaced, the public needs to know as well that this isn't buying a new chiller. We are actually moving the chiller that is at the event center down to the ice arena, which part of that move also includes testing the piece of equipment before it is ever moved, because there was some possible water damage to that unit. If it does not work and operate appropriately, then any of that damage gets replaced by an insurance claim, to where we know we are moving a good piece of equipment rather than spending the money to move it and then find out there was other damage. The other thing is, too, is there are always rumors of a second sheet of ice at the ice arena. This particular chiller unit would actually be able to accommodate both the existing and an additional sheet of ice, so that there wouldn't have to be another purchase of an ice chiller at that facility. So I think those are a couple of things that need to go along with that, so that everybody doesn't think we're just out buying another ice chiller. But yes, it does need to be replaced to be able to continue with our hockey programs and with our other ice programs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other discussion? Any amendments? Okay, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 9A1, a lease with Johnson Group Restaurant Group for the 19th Hole Restaurant. Item 9A2, a license agreement with Black Hills Energy for installation of varied gas lines. Item 9A3, authorizing the creation of Local Assessment District 157 at Arrowhead and Jade. Item 9A4, a utility license with Wyoming Department of Transportation for a line to 1910 Talc. Item 9A5, an access agreement adjacent to the DeWall Divide Edition. Item 9A6, procurement agreement with Thatcher Company for ferrous chloride. Item 9A7, a contract with State Line No. 7 Architects for City Hall renovations. Item 9A8, an easement to Rocky Mountain Power for the Midwest Avenue reconstruction project. Item 9A9, an agreement with Knife River for the 21st Street and Shattuck sanitary sewer replacement. Item 9A10, vacation and replat, creating the White Dog Addition No. 2 and a subdivision agreement. And item 9A11, designating the city clerk's office as the office for filing claims against the city.
Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Lutz and seconded by Councilman Hopkins. City Manager, would you like to make any comments on any of the items? Okay. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
This time we ask council members to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. Councilman Hopkins.
Well, I guess I'd like to thank the progress that our lawmakers from Matrona County have made. They've represented us well. They're doing a good job for us down there. Just encourage them to keep up the good work. With regard to the young ladies that were having trouble with parking issues downtown, that's been a long time problem and will continue to be. But if I remember correctly, I think their landlord at their current property where they are is also the landlord of DDA's office. So that might give them a little key to get in there and talk to them.
Councilman Johnson.
Nothing tonight.
Councilman Pacheco.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilman Bates.
Just want to congratulate all the officers that went to the ceremony last week, and hearing what great job Chief McFeeters is doing with the police department, and the police officers, to their credit, the hard work that they put in just continues to astound me. So that's it.
Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had the opportunity to spend some time up at the event center during the wrestling competitions this past weekend, and the place was full, very well run, and the attendance was up, and I am cautiously optimistic that our events center will continue on its present path, which has attendance at events increasing over time, quality events, the quality of events increasing over time. Mr. Murphy informed me that the facility was booked 27 days in March. So there's a lot going on, and they're working very hard to utilize the facility. I do think the improvements in the seats has made a difference, but I'm hopeful that we're going to see that subsidy continue to go down over time, which is what we worked so hard for over the past several years. So, nothing else, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Cathy.
Well, I may wind up stealing a little bit of your thunder, Mr. Mayor, but I want to put a plug in for the CNFR. That is coming up June 14th to the 20th, and there will actually be on that Monday, the 15th, a Parade of Champions downtown, and tickets start going on sale to the general public April 10th. So get out there, get your tickets, plan on spending the week of June with us. These are fine young men that come from all across the country, and they bring their families and their relatives, and they enjoy coming here. And basically, the CNFR has started to pick up a different brand. Instead of going to the CNFR in their regions, they are going to Casper, which they enjoy coming here. We need to show up and turn out and show them we appreciate having them come here. So let's get out, let's get our tickets, let's plan on attending, and let's plan on supporting the rodeo. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Lutz.
Nothing tonight.
I'll just piggyback on what you were saying. Yeah, a lot of fine athletes, male and female, coming here for the CNFR. The events that have been planned this year are, I think, going to be well beyond what we've done in the past. I know we're talking about having a Casper Day, Parade of Champions downtown. You get the fly-in at the same time. It's going to be a busy week, and I think it's going to be a very, very good time. I'd say on the other front, on I have a concern to where I'd like us to look into what's going on with DDA. This is not the first time we've heard this, and to have business owners come to us and say they can't, first of all, can't get a hold of anybody there, of which I've expressed my exact same thing to you, Mr. Manager, with a sign in the window. And I understand, Councilman Powell, that they had cut back, they decided to do that and cut back on office time, or having people in the office, I guess, to.
Well, If I may clarify, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
What they have said is that they, because of the layout of the offices, they don't have a receptionist that is in view of someone who might come in. And so because of that, they do lock the door but they are there in the back offices. And so that's an operational decision that, you know, could be adjusted, and the board would have to give different direction, but it was really a cost-saving measure to not have a receptionist being paid by the DDA to basically greet the public. And so it does appear that the office is closed when it may in fact be open. People just need to call.
So to follow up on that, the signs do say to get a hold of them online. And in doing so, you do get in a perpetual loop of, I'm not in, contact this person, and then you don't get a phone call back for quite some time. So exactly, I've personally experienced exactly what these guys are talking about tonight.
And I'm sorry, that's very legitimate. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm just saying
Sure.
that was the reasoning we were given.
Sure. But more so not being able to get vouchers. Our parking's our biggest problem down there, and we can't even get vouchers to businesses to be able to get people in a parking garage to alleviate a parking problem. And then on top of that, they themselves not being able to even be able to set up their own parking spaces in the parking garage again to get cars off of the street and open it up for the public. So I would just ask that we again have a conversation to see what we can do to make things more efficient, or what is causing these hiccups to happen over there, and just see what we can do to address that, and at least address the concerns that are blatantly in front of us here tonight. So with that, I don't have anything else. So the next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, March 10th, 2020, in the council's meeting room, and a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, March 17th, 2020, in the council chambers. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have a matter to discuss regarding litigation. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjournment of this meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, second by Councilman Johnson. There being a majority of members present and a majority to adjourn into an executive session having been moved and seconded, and that motion requiring 2/3 majority of the council present, please cast your vote.
Sorry, hold on a second.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Under the weather.
A greater than 2/3 majority of the council present voted in favor of the motion. We are hereby adjourned into a executive session.